Warren Whitmore watched his business rival stride into the hotel conference room like she owned the entire building. And for one brief, utterly inappropriate moment, he wondered what it would feel like to kiss that confident smirk right off her face. He immediately pushed the thought away, straightening his tie and reminding himself that Bridget Ashford represented everything standing between him and the biggest acquisition of his career. The luxury yacht manufacturing industry was cutthroat, and Warren had spent 15 years building Whitmore Maritime into a powerhouse worth $300 million. Now, at 34, he was poised to acquire Coastal Dreams, a prestigious but struggling yacht company that would cement his position as the industry leader. The only problem was Bridget Ashford and her company, Ashford Marine Designs, wanted the same thing. "Gentlemen," Bridget said, her voice smooth as aged whiskey as she acknowledged the room. Her eyes landed on Warren last, and he saw the competitive spark there. "Warren, Bridget." He kept his tone neutral, professional, even as his pulse kicked up a notch. She wore a navy suit that was all business, her dark blonde hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail that showed off the sharp angles of her face. Everything about her screamed competence and control, which made sense considering she had built her company from nothing in just 8 years. At 29, she was already worth over $100 million. They were both here to make their final pitches to Gregory Coastal, the aging owner of Coastal Dreams, who sat at the head of the table looking tired and uncertain. The next 2 hours would determine who walked away with the prize. Warren delivered his presentation with practiced ease, outlining how Whitmore Maritime would preserve the Coastal Dreams legacy while modernizing operations and expanding market reach. His numbers were solid, his vision clear. When he finished, Gregory nodded thoughtfully but gave nothing away. Then it was Bridget's turn. Warren tried not to watch too closely as she moved to the front of the room, but it was impossible not to notice the graceful confidence in her movements, the passion in her voice when she talked about yacht design innovation. She understood the romance of these vessels, the way they represented freedom and adventure to the people who bought them. Her pitch was more emotional than his, less focused on pure numbers and more on the soul of the business. When she finished, Warren had to admit she had made a compelling case. "Too compelling." "Thank you both," Gregory said, standing slowly. "I need time to consider. I will make my decision by the end of the month, 3 weeks. Warren had 3 weeks to wait and wonder and probably lose his mind. As the meeting broke up, Warren found himself near the door at the same moment as Bridget. They stepped into the hallway together, and for a moment neither spoke. "That was a good pitch," he said finally, surprised by his own honesty. She glanced at him, one eyebrow raised. "Trying to lull me into complacency, Whitmore. Just acknowledging a worthy opponent." Something flickered across her face, too quick to read. "Well, may the best businessperson win." "Intend to," he replied, and she laughed, a real laugh that made something in his chest tighten. "Of course you do." She started to walk away, then paused and looked back. "You know what I noticed about your presentation?" "What?" "You talked a lot about efficiency and profit margins, but you never once mentioned why you love these boats. Do you even remember why you got into this business?" The question hit harder than it should have. Before Warren could formulate a response, she was gone, heels clicking down the marble hallway. He stood there longer than necessary, unsettled in a way he could not quite name. Over the next week, Warren tried to focus on his other business operations, but thoughts of Bridget kept intruding at inappropriate moments. He remembered her question about loving the boats, and found himself thinking about his grandfather, who had been a yacht captain and used to take young Warren out on the water every summer. Those had been magic days, learning about navigation and weather patterns and the way a well-crafted vessel could slice through waves like a dancer. When had he stopped thinking about that magic and started only seeing profit spreadsheets? He was in this uncomfortable reverie when his assistant buzzed him. "Mr. Whitmore, there is someone here to see you. She does not have an appointment, but she says it is important." "Who is it?" "Bridget Ashford." Warren sat up straighter, his pulse immediately quickening. "Send her in." Bridget entered his office a moment later, and he noticed immediately that something was different. She looked agitated, a crack in that polished armor. "We have a problem," she said without preamble. "Have you seen the news about Coastal Dreams?" He had not. Warren quickly pulled up the industry news sites on his computer, and his stomach dropped. The headline screamed, "Coastal Dreams faces lawsuit over patent infringement, potential bankruptcy." "This just broke an hour ago," Bridget said, pacing in front of his desk. Apparently, Gregory used a proprietary hull design that belonged to someone else. The lawsuit is claiming damages that would sink the company entirely. Warren read through the article quickly, his mind already calculating implications. If Coastal Dreams declares bankruptcy, all their assets go into liquidation. Exactly. Which means neither of us gets what we wanted. The company gets carved up and sold in pieces, the brand dies, and hundreds of employees lose their jobs. She stopped pacing and looked at him directly. "Unless we do something about it. The lawsuit is asking for $12 million in damages. Gregory does not have that kind of liquid capital, especially with his recent revenue problems. But you and I could cover it together." Warren leaned back in his chair, studying her. "You want us to jointly acquire Coastal Dreams. I want us to save it. We pool resources, we buy the company together, and we run it as a partnership. Ashford Marine Designs and Whitmore Maritime operating Coastal Dreams as a shared entity." It was insane. It was unprecedented in their industry. It was also potentially brilliant. "We are competitors," he pointed out. "We have completely different business philosophies. Maybe that is what Coastal Dreams needs, your operational efficiency combined with my design innovation." She crossed her arms. "Look, I know this is crazy. 24 hours ago, I would have rather eaten glass than partner with you. But I got into this business because I love these boats, and I cannot stand by and watch Coastal Dreams get destroyed." "Can you?" Her question echoed his recent thoughts about his grandfather too perfectly to ignore. Warren found himself nodding slowly. "All right, let us talk numbers." They spent the next 3 hours hammering out a rough framework. They would split ownership 50-50, with Warren handling operations and finances while Bridget led design and marketing. Major decisions would require mutual agreement. It was complicated and potentially messy, but it could work. By the time Bridget left his office, it was past 8 in the evening, and Warren felt more energized than he had in months. Working with her had been intense, occasionally argumentative, but also exhilarating. She challenged every assumption, pushed back on weak points, and brought insights he had not considered. They had ended up with a better plan than either could have created alone. The next morning they met with Gregory together. The old man's relief was palpable when they explained their proposal. Within a week, they had structured the deal, acquired Coastal Dreams jointly, and paid off the lawsuit settlement. Warren and Bridget were now business partners, which meant they would be spending a lot of time together. The first month was an exercise in controlled chaos. They had to integrate Coastal Dreams with both their existing companies, calm nervous employees, and reassure clients. Warren and Bridget met almost daily, usually at the Coastal Dreams headquarters, which sat on a beautiful waterfront property with a working marina. Warren started to learn things about his new partner. She arrived every morning with coffee from the same local shop, always black, always too hot to drink right away. She had a habit of walking down to the docks when she needed to think, standing at the end of the pier and watching the boats sway in their slips. She was demanding with her team, but also fiercely loyal, and she had a photographic memory for design specifications. She also had a laugh that could light up an entire room, though she rarely let it fully out in professional settings. They had their share of disagreements. Bridget wanted to invest heavily in a new experimental hull design, while Warren worried about the cost. Warren wanted to streamline production schedules, while Bridget argued it would compromise quality. They learned to negotiate, to compromise, to find solutions that honored both their perspectives. One evening, they were working late in the Coastal Dreams office, reviewing quarterly projections. Warren looked up from his spreadsheet to find Bridget staring at her computer screen with a furrow between her brows. "What is wrong?" he asked. She glanced at him, then back at her screen. "I am trying to decide if I am seeing a design flaw or if I am just tired. Let me look." He came around the desk to stand behind her chair, leaning down to see the yacht schematic she had pulled up. She smelled like something subtle and expensive, and he had to force himself to focus on the screen. "Where is the issue?" "The weight distribution on this new model. See how the master cabin is positioned here. I think it is going to create drag." Warren studied the design, running calculations in his head. "You are right. If you shift the cabin back by 2 feet and rebalance with the galley positioning, it should solve the problem." She made the adjustments on screen, and they both watched as the computer simulation showed improved performance. "That is better. Good catch. You caught it," he pointed out. "I just confirmed. Team effort." She turned in her chair to look up at him, and suddenly Warren realized how close they were. He could see the flecks of green in her hazel eyes, the faint freckles across her nose that her makeup usually hid. Her lips parted slightly, and the air between them charged with something electric. Warren stepped back abruptly. "It is late. We should call it a night." Something that might have been disappointment crossed Bridget's face, but it was gone too quickly to be sure. "Right. Good idea." They packed up in silence, and Warren tried not to think about how badly he had wanted to close that distance between them instead of stepping away. This was a problem. A significant problem. He was falling for his business partner, the woman who had been his rival just 2 months ago. Getting involved with her could complicate everything they had built. Their partnership was working because they maintained professional boundaries. Romance would mess that up spectacularly, especially if things went wrong. Warren tried to maintain distance over the next few weeks, keeping their interactions strictly professional. But it was hard when they were collaborating so closely, when he kept noticing little things about her that made his chest tight. The way she bit her lower lip when she was concentrating. How she always tucked a strand of hair behind her right ear when she was nervous. The passion in her voice when she talked about a new design concept. He was not the only one noticing things, apparently. They were at a client event one evening, a yacht show where Coastal Dreams was premiering their latest model. The launch had gone well, and Warren was nursing a glass of wine while making small talk with potential buyers. Across the room, he saw Bridget laughing at something a client said, her whole face animated. "You have it bad," a voice said beside him. Warren turned to find Marcus Chen, an old friend from business school who now ran a maritime supply company. "What are you talking about?" "You have been staring at your partner for the last 10 minutes with a look that is definitely not professional." Marcus grinned. "So when are you going to do something about it?" "There is nothing to do something about. We are business partners. And you are also clearly into each other. Everyone can see it. Everyone." the way you two work together, the way you look at each other when you think no one is watching. Come on, Warren, I have known you for 15 years. You have never looked at anyone the way you look at her." Warren took a long drink of his wine. "Even if that were true, which I am not confirming, getting involved would be a terrible idea. Our partnership is too important to risk. Or maybe your partnership is so strong because you are compatible in more ways than just business." Marcus clapped him on the shoulder. "Just think about it. Life is too short to walk away from something real because you are afraid of complications." The conversation stayed with Warren. Over the next few days, he found himself watching Bridget more carefully, trying to gauge if Marcus had been right about her feeling the same way. A few times, he caught her looking at him with an expression that made his heart race, but she always looked away quickly. The situation came to a head 2 weeks later during a business trip to Miami. They were meeting with a major yacht broker who could potentially bring them millions in sales. The meetings went well, and that evening they found themselves having dinner together at a waterfront restaurant. It started as a business dinner, reviewing the day's negotiations over seafood and wine. But as the evening wore on, the conversation drifted into more personal territory. "Can I ask you something?" Bridget said, swirling the wine in her glass. "Why did you really agree to the partnership? You could have just let Coastal Dreams fail and picked up the pieces yourself." Warren considered the question, the wine making him more honest than he might have been otherwise. "You asked me if I remembered why I loved these boats. That question stuck with me. My grandfather was a yacht captain. He died when I was 16, and I think somewhere along the way, I lost sight of why I got into this business in the first place. When you pitched Saving Coastal Dreams, it felt like a chance to reconnect with that. I wish I had gotten to meet your grandfather. He sounds like he was special." He was. He used to say that a yacht was not just a boat, it was a promise of adventure, of freedom, of possibilities. Warren smiled at the memory. "What about you? What got you into this world?" "My mom worked as a cleaning lady for a yacht club when I was growing up. Sometimes she would bring me with her during the summer, and I would wander around looking at all these beautiful boats. I was fascinated by how something could be functional and also a work of art. When I was 12, I decided I was going to build yachts one day." She laughed softly. "Everyone thought I was crazy, a poor kid from a single-parent household becoming a yacht designer, but I was stubborn. Stubborn." "You," Warren teased, and she threw her napkin at him. "Says the man who once told me in a trade magazine interview that he would own the entire luxury yacht market within 10 years. I was feeling ambitious that day." They smiled at each other, and the moment stretched into something weighted with everything they were not saying. "Warren," Bridget said finally, her voice quieter, "can I ask you something else, of course? These past few months, working with you, it has been the best professional experience of my career. But lately, I feel like there is something else happening here, and I cannot tell if I am imagining it or if you feel it too." Warren's heart hammered against his ribs. This was it, the moment where he could deflect and keep things safe and professional. Or he could be honest and risk everything they had built. He thought about his grandfather, about promises and possibilities and adventure. "You are not imagining it," he said. "I have been trying not to feel it because I did not want to complicate our partnership, but I have been failing spectacularly. I think about you constantly, Bridget, not just as my business partner." She drew in a sharp breath, her eyes widening. "Really, really. But I also do not want to mess up what we have professionally. Our partnership works, and I would not want to jeopardize that. What if we did not have to choose? What if we could figure out how to make both things work? Could we? I do not know, but I would like to try." She reached across the table, and after only a moment's hesitation, he took her hand. Her fingers were warm, fitting perfectly with his. I like you, Warren Whitmore, not just as a business partner. I like arguing with you and solving problems with you and the way you remember everyone's coffee order. I like how you still get excited when a yacht launches, even though you have seen hundreds of them. I like you, and I have been trying not to because I was scared, but I am tired of being scared. Warren felt something unlock in his chest, something that had been wound tight for months. I like you too, so much it has been making me crazy. So what do we do about it? He stood up, still holding her hand, and gently pulled her to her feet. They were standing close now, close enough that he could count her freckles, see the flutter of her pulse at her throat. I think, he said softly, we take a chance. When he kissed her, it felt like jumping off a cliff and flying at the same time. Her lips were soft, her response immediate, one hand coming up to cup the back of his neck. The restaurant faded away until there was nothing but the two of them, this moment, this perfect, terrifying possibility. When they finally broke apart, both slightly breathless, Bridget laughed. Well, that just happened. Having regrets already, not even close. She squeezed his hand. But we should probably figure out some ground rules. We still have to work together. Agreed. How about we keep professional and personal separate at the office? No one needs to know about this yet while we figure out what it is. That makes sense. And we promise to communicate honestly if anything feels off, either professionally or personally. Deal. He kissed her again, lighter this time, almost playful. This is crazy, right? Completely insane, she agreed, grinning. But it also feels right. They walked along the Miami beach after dinner, shoes in hand, talking about everything and nothing. Warren learned that she was secretly addicted to reality television, that she could not cook to save her life, that she had a younger sister who was a teacher in Boston. She learned that he played piano, that he was terrified of heights despite loving boats, that his favorite food was his grandmother's lasagna recipe that he had never quite mastered himself. By the time they got back to their hotel, it was past midnight, and Warren was feeling something he had not felt in years, maybe ever. Pure, uncomplicated happiness. My room or yours? Bridget asked in the elevator, and there was both nervousness and heat in her eyes. Yours, he said. Unless you would rather wait. I have been waiting for months without even realizing it. I do not want to wait anymore. They barely made it through her door before they were kissing again, urgent this time, months of suppressed attraction finally unleashed. Her fingers worked at his tie while his hands explored the curve of her waist, the silk of her hair when he finally pulled it free from its ponytail. Clothes scattered across the floor, and when they finally tumbled into bed together, it felt both brand new and like coming home. Afterward, they lay tangled together, and Warren traced lazy patterns on her bare shoulder. I should probably tell you something. She was half asleep, relaxed and warm against him. I started falling for you the first moment I saw you in that conference room before we were even partners. You walked in looking like you could conquer the world, and something in my brain short-circuited. She lifted her head to look at him, smiling. That is when I was still your rival. I know, terrible timing. I thought you were annoyingly attractive, she admitted. Which made me mad because I was trying to beat you. When did it change for you? When did it become more than just finding me annoyingly attractive? She thought about it. Maybe that day we were working late, and you noticed I had been stressed, and you ordered dinner from my favorite restaurant without me even mentioning I was hungry. That was when I realized you had been paying attention to more than just the business. I pay attention to everything about you, he said quietly. It is becoming a problem, a good problem, the best problem. They flew back home the next day, and the secret relationship began in earnest. At the office, they maintained their professional dynamic, though Warren found it increasingly difficult not to touch her, not to let his feelings show. But in private, they were learning each other, navigating this new dimension of their relationship. They kept their relationship quiet at first, not ready to deal with the questions and potential complications that would come from going public. They stole moments when they could dinner at quiet restaurants outside their usual circles, weekends at Warren's beach house, late nights at her apartment where they would cook together, which usually meant Warren cooked while Bridget kept him company and taste tested. It was good. Better than good. Warren had dated before, had even thought he was in love once or twice, but nothing compared to this. Bridget challenged him, surprised him, made him laugh and think and want to be better. She was brilliant and passionate and kind, and he was falling deeper every day. But the secrecy was beginning to wear on him. He wanted to hold her hand in public, to introduce her as his girlfriend, not just his business partner. He wanted to stop pretending that she did not mean everything to him. 3 months into their relationship, Warren decided it was time to talk about going public. He took her to his favorite spot, a quiet dock at sunset where the water turned gold and the world felt peaceful. "I want people to know about us," he said, holding her hand as they watched the boats bob in their slips. "I am tired of hiding how I feel about you." Bridget was quiet for a moment. "I want that too, but I am scared." "Of what?" "What if people think our relationship undermines our professional credibility? We worked hard to make this partnership succeed. I do not want people dismissing it as some romantic entanglement that will fall apart." "What if it does not fall apart? What if this is real and permanent?" She looked at him, eyes searching his face. "Is that what you think this is?" "I love you, Bridget." The words came easier than he expected. "I am in love with you and I want a future with you, not just as business partners but as partners in everything." "So yes, I think this is real and permanent." Tears welled in her eyes, catching the sunset light. "I love you too. God, I love you so much it terrifies me." "Then let us be terrified together. Let us stop hiding and just be honest about what we are." She kissed him, soft and sweet. "Okay. Let us tell people." They started with their closest team members at Coastal Dreams, calling a small meeting and explaining that their relationship had evolved beyond professional partnership. The reactions were universally positive, with several people admitting they had already suspected. Apparently, they had been less subtle than they thought. The industry response was more mixed. Some people were supportive, others skeptical. A few competitors tried to use it against them, suggesting the partnership would crumble once the romance did. But Warren and Bridget faced it all together, continuing to prove through their work that their relationship only made their business stronger. 6 months into their relationship, Coastal Dreams was thriving. They had launched 3 new yacht models, all successful. Revenue was up 40%. Employee satisfaction had improved dramatically. Warren and Bridget had proven that their combined vision was more powerful than either could have achieved alone. Warren's mother, who had been skeptical at first about him partnering with a former rival, invited them both for Sunday dinner. Over pot roast and potatoes, she grilled Bridget thoroughly before finally declaring her approval. "She keeps you honest," his mother said to Warren while Bridget was in the kitchen helping with dessert. "I have never seen you this happy." "I have never been this happy," he admitted. One evening, they were back at that dock where Warren had first told Bridget he loved her. They had been working on a particularly challenging design problem all day, and both needed the peace of the water. "You ever regret it?" Bridget asked, leaning against him as they watched the sunset. "Going into partnership with me, I mean. Your life would probably be simpler if you had just acquired Coastal Dreams yourself. Simpler is not always better. And no, I have never regretted it for even a second." He turned her to face him, hands on her shoulders. You made me remember why I love this business. You pushed me to be better, to think bigger, to care about more than just profit margins. You gave me back something I did not even realize I had lost. You did the same for me. I was so focused on proving myself, on showing everyone who doubted me that I could succeed, that I was burning myself out. You taught me that I do not have to do everything alone, that partnership can be a strength, not a weakness. We make a good team, the best team. She smiled up at him, and his heart clenched with how much he loved her. Warren had been carrying the ring in his pocket for 2 weeks, waiting for the right moment. Suddenly, he knew this was it. This quiet moment at sunset, just the two of them and the water and the boats that had brought them together. He took a deep breath and dropped to one knee. Bridget's eyes went wide, one hand flying to her mouth. Warren, I know we have only been together for less than a year, and maybe this is too fast, but I also know with absolute certainty that I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Not just as my business partner, but as my wife, my best friend, my everything. He pulled out the ring, a simple, elegant diamond that he had chosen carefully. Bridget Ashford, will you marry me? Tears streamed down her face, but she was smiling, that huge, genuine smile that he loved. Yes, yes, absolutely yes. He slid the ring onto her finger, and then she was pulling him up and kissing him, both of them laughing and crying at the same time. A few people on nearby boats noticed and started cheering, which made them laugh harder. I love you, she said against his lips. I love you so much. I love you too, always. They set a wedding date for the following spring, a year after they had first become partners. The wedding would be on the water, of course, on one of their own yachts. It only made sense. The next several months flew by in a blur of wedding planning and continued business success. Coastal Dreams secured a contract with a major international hotel chain to provide private yachts for their luxury properties. Ashford Marine Designs and Whitmore Maritime both continued to thrive independently while their joint venture flourished. But more importantly, Warren and Bridget built a life together. She moved into his waterfront house, and they spent evenings on the deck watching the sunset, planning their future. They talked about everything, whether they wanted kids, which they both did, where they saw the business in 10 years, what kind of legacy they wanted to leave. I want our kids to love the water the way we do, Bridget said one evening, her head on his shoulder. I want them to understand that work can be a passion, not just a paycheck. They will. We will make sure of it. He kissed the top of her head. Although fair warning, I plan to spoil them outrageously. Of course you do, she laughed. We are going to have to work on that. The wedding was perfect. Small and intimate, just their closest friends and family aboard a yacht cruising along the coast. Bridget wore a simple white dress that took Warren's breath away, and when she walked toward him across the deck, he had to blink back tears. His vows were from the heart. You were my rival before you were my partner, and my partner before you were my love. But in every role, you have made me better. You challenged me when I needed it, supported me when I was struggling, and loved me when I did not think I deserved it. I promise to be your partner in all things, to build our dreams together, and to love you every single day for the rest of our lives. Her vows matched his in emotion. I thought I had to do everything alone to prove I was strong enough, but you taught me that true strength is knowing when to trust someone else, when to combine forces and create something bigger than either of us could alone. You are my rival, my partner, my best friend, and my love. I promise to challenge you, support you, and choose you every day in business and in life. When they kissed as husband and wife, the small crowd erupted in cheers, and Warren felt a joy so profound it was almost overwhelming. At the reception, his mother cornered him while Bridget was dancing with her sister. Your grandfather would have loved her, she said, squeezing his arm. He always said the right partner makes you want to sail toward the horizon instead of staying in safe harbors. I am definitely sailing toward the horizon now, Warren agreed, watching his wife laugh at something her sister said. And I have never been happier. The honeymoon was 2 weeks in the Mediterranean, sailing between Greek islands on a yacht they had designed together. It was the first real vacation either had taken in years, and they made the most of it, sleeping late, swimming in crystal blue water, making love under the stars. "We should do this every year," Bridget said, stretched out on the deck in a bikini that made Warren's thoughts thoroughly unprofessional. "Just disappear for a couple weeks and remember that life is not just about business. Deal? Although I make no promises about keeping my hands to myself if you keep wearing that." She laughed and pulled him down for a kiss. "I was counting on that." When they returned home, they settled into married life with surprising ease. They maintained separate offices during the day, but their partnership had become so seamless that they often finished each other's thoughts in meetings. They would argue about business decisions, sometimes heatedly, but they had learned how to disagree productively, to push each other toward better solutions. At home, they were building something equally strong. They cooked together, or rather Warren cooked while Bridget kept him company. They took the boat out on weekends. They hosted dinners for friends and family. They talked about everything and nothing, maintaining the emotional intimacy that had made their relationship work from the beginning. A year and a half after their wedding, Bridget came home from a doctor's appointment with news that made Warren's heart stop and then race. "We are having a baby," she said, eyes shining with tears and joy. "I am 8 weeks pregnant." Warren pulled her into his arms, overwhelmed with emotion. "Really? We are going to be parents. We are going to be parents." They told their families that weekend at a big dinner, and the celebration was loud and joyful. Warren's mother cried happy tears and immediately started planning a baby shower. Bridget's sister started listing all the baby clothes she was going to buy. The pregnancy was not easy. Bridget had terrible morning sickness the first trimester, and Warren learned to stock the house with ginger ale and crackers. As she got bigger, she struggled with being uncomfortable and not being able to move as easily. Warren did everything he could to help, rubbing her feet and back, bringing her snacks at odd hours, assembling the nursery furniture. "I look like a whale," she said one evening in her 8th month, staring at herself in the mirror. "You look beautiful. You are growing our child. There is nothing more beautiful than that. You are legally required to say that. I am saying it because it is true." He came up behind her, wrapping his arms carefully around her swollen belly. "You have never been more beautiful to me than you are right now." She leaned back against him, and he felt the baby kick against his hands. The miracle of it still took his breath away. Their daughter was born on a sunny spring morning, arriving 3 weeks early and in a hurry. The labor was intense and fast, and Warren held Bridget's hand through all of it, in awe of her strength. When the doctor placed their daughter in Bridget's arms, both of them burst into tears. "She is perfect," Bridget whispered, staring down at the tiny face. "Look at her, Warren. We made her. She is absolutely perfect." He touched one tiny hand and his daughter's fingers wrapped around his. "Hello, sweetheart. I am your daddy and I love you so much already." They named her Sarah Grace Whitmore, after Warren's grandmother and Bridget's mother. She had Bridget's nose and Warren's dark hair, and she was the most beautiful thing either of them had ever seen. The first few months were exhausting and wonderful. They were both sleep-deprived and overwhelmed, but they were also happier than Warren had imagined possible. He loved coming home to find Bridget nursing Sarah, loved the weight of his daughter sleeping on his chest, loved watching this tiny human they had created together. They adjusted their work schedules, both working from home more often and trading off baby duties. Their team at Coastal Dreams was supportive, understanding that their priorities had shifted. The business continued to thrive even as Warren and Bridget pulled back slightly to focus on their daughter. "I keep thinking about what you said when we first met," Bridget said one evening. They were on their deck, Sarah asleep in her bassinet between them, the sun setting over the water. "About yachts being a promise of adventure and possibility. What about it? I feel like that is what our whole life has become. This grand adventure full of possibilities. We started as rivals, became partners, fell in love, built a family. If someone had told me 3 years ago that this is where I would be, I would never have believed them." Warren reached over and took her hand. "I would not change a single thing. Well, maybe I would have kissed you sooner back when we were still rivals." She laughed. "That would have been a disaster, probably, but also amazing. It worked out perfectly, though. We got exactly where we were supposed to be." He looked at his wife, at his sleeping daughter, at the water and the boats and the sky painted in sunset colors. She was right. Despite the complicated path, despite starting as competitors who should have been each other's downfall, they had found their way to something beautiful and real and lasting. "I used to think falling for you could ruin everything," Warren said quietly. "That it would destroy our businesses, complicate everything beyond repair. And I was right, in a way. It did ruin everything." Bridget looked alarmed. "What do you mean? It ruined me for anyone else, for any other kind of life?" "It ruined all my carefully laid plans and my ideas about keeping business and personal separate. But you know what?" He squeezed her hand. "Being ruined with you beats any version of my life that was without you, every single time." Tears shimmered in her eyes. "That might be the most romantic thing you have ever said to me, and you said some pretty romantic vows at our wedding. I mean it. You are my greatest adventure, Bridget. You and Sarah. This life we have built together. I would choose it over everything else every single time." She leaned over carefully, mindful of the sleeping baby between them, and kissed him. "I love you, Warren Whitmore. My rival, my partner, my husband, the father of my child. I love all of it. I love you too. Always." As the sun set and their daughter slept peacefully, Warren thought about his grandfather and the lessons about yachts being promises. He had found his own promise, not in the boats he built, but in the woman beside him and the family they had created. They had taken a chance on each other when it made no sense, when being rivals was safer and simpler. But they had chosen the adventure instead of the safe harbor, and it had led them here. Sarah stirred, making tiny noises, and Bridget picked her up, holding her close. Warren watched his wife with their daughter, the two people who meant everything to him, and felt a contentment so complete, it was almost overwhelming. The boats in the marina swayed gently in their slips, promising adventure to everyone who dared to set sail. But Warren had already found his greatest voyage. It had started in a conference room with a rival who challenged him, continued through business partnerships and late nights and stolen kisses, and had led him here to this perfect evening with his wife and daughter. Some people might say that falling for his business rival had been a risk too big, that he should have maintained professional boundaries and kept his feelings locked away. But those people would have been wrong. Taking that risk, choosing love over safety, had been the best decision of his life. "What are you thinking about?" Bridget asked, noticing his expression. "Just how lucky I am. How all of this started because we both wanted the same struggling yacht company. And because you could not help but fall for your rival. And because you could not help but fall for yours," he countered. She smiled. "True. Best business decision I ever made, partnering with me, loving you. The partnership was just a bonus." Warren stood and moved to sit beside her, wrapping one arm around her shoulders while she held their daughter. The three of them together, a family built on a foundation of competition that had transformed into something far more powerful. 2 years later, they welcomed their son, Daniel Warren Whitmore, who looked just like his mother and had his father's stubborn determination. Sarah was a wonderful big sister, gentle and curious about the new baby. Coastal Dreams continued to flourish under their joint leadership, becoming one of the most respected yacht companies in the world. But Warren and Bridget had learned to balance their ambition with their family life, making sure that business success never came at the cost of the things that truly mattered. On their 5th wedding anniversary, they returned to that dock where Warren had proposed, this time with 2 children in tow. Sarah, now 4, loved the boats and wanted to see every single one in the marina. Daniel, just 2, was content to toddle around and point at seagulls. "Do you remember what you said to me here?" Bridget asked, holding Daniel while Warren chased Sarah around the dock. "When you proposed, I said a lot of things. I was nervous. You said I was your business partner, your best friend, and your everything. That is still true, you know. After everything, after building our family and our businesses and our life together, you are still all those things to me too." Warren caught Sarah and swung her up onto his shoulders before walking back to his wife. "Good, because I plan to be those things for the next 50 or 60 years. "Only 50 or 60? Fine. Forever. I plan to be those things forever." She kissed him, quick and sweet because they had children climbing on them. Forever sounds perfect. Their journey had started with competition and progressed through partnership, falling in love along the way. They had taken a risk that could have destroyed everything, but instead, it had built something stronger than either could have created alone. They had proven that sometimes the best business decision was following your heart, that loving your rival could lead to the greatest success of all. Warren looked at his wife, his children, the boats swaying in the marina, the endless possibility of the horizon. This was his legacy, not just the successful companies but the family he had built with the woman who had challenged him, partnered with him, and loved him. The woman who had been his rival first, his partner second, and his everything eventually, and he would not change a single moment of the journey that had brought them here.